Hi, everyone. We are about to start. Good afternoon and good morning to others joining us from around the world. Thank you so much for joining us today, both here in the room and others joining virtually. My name is Sarah Furuzesh. I'm a Deputy Director at the Just Rural Transition Initiative. I am delighted to say that we've been joined here today by Mr. Gonzalo Muniz, UN High-Level Climate Champion. He doesn't need introduction, but I'm going to take a couple of minutes just to introduce him before he gives the opening remarks to our session. Mr. Muniz is a business entrepreneur and social change maker at the forefront of environmental innovation in Chile. He reinvented the country's recycling industry to usher a future without waste. In recognition of his leadership, Gonzalo Muniz was awarded the Circular's 2019 International Prize at the World Economic Forum and was also invited to join the new Plastic Economy Advisory Panel at the Ellen MacArthur Foundation. Gonzalo, thank you so much for joining us. The floor is yours.
Thanks so much. Well, thanks so much. I would like to reflect on what brings us today as a fantastic and brutal example of the tensions that we are confronting as humankind. Of course, we are facing most of the impacts of a growing population, but also a growing population that at the same time needs to tackle problems like, of course, hunger and malnutrition in several countries of the world. So when we talk about race to resilience, it's so important to connect immediately at least two of those areas of work, being the urban poors of the world, mostly around the way they live and the situation of the urbanisms around the world, but also the smallholder farmers and what they can develop as solutions, not only that they have to thrive despite of the pandemic. We know that we need to change the way we interact with our food system. The food system is absolutely broken. We know that. That's not only happening in the rural areas, but that's also being strongly reflected in the way people relate to food. That goes from, of course, the importance of using the food producing capacity to restore nature, to regenerate nature. Because we know that we need to stop food loss in the phases of production as well as post-consumption. Then we need the agri-system to work in a way that will reduce the emissions, but that needs to happen in a way that not only leaves no one behind. We need that we will succeed, as Sheila Patel always say, right? We will succeed by what the poor woman of the world declares. And I would say the farmers have also the capacity of saying whether we are really solving the crisis or not, because it will be related to their capacity to being not only the stewards of land, they should be the ones that will providing solutions in a very local level. They need to, or we all need to work towards their resilience. But at the same time, it's about how we bring the right type of technology, both in the rural areas, but also in the urban areas. We might have the capacity of releasing a lot of tensions that we're putting on the land use while developing the right type of technology, both in the rural areas, but also through urban farming and vertical farming. I'm pleased now to, of course, be here around the importance of putting this element all together to immediately stop migration, because of we are not being capable of delivering the right type of solutions for millions, if not billions of people that are now effectively confronting a really strong, all of the most strong impacts of the climate crisis. We also need to make peace with nature. And we know that nature and biodiversity are relevant buffers for us from the impacts of climate change. I tend to think that this might be not only a COP where we position resilience at the same level as mitigation, but also one that will position nature in the place that we should always have been. And therefore, I understand those two connections resilience and nature as one that is very properly integrated in this panel. So with no further ado, I would like to ask for keep on pushing for this agenda to continue moving forward. Next year COP will definitely work about resilience and nature and finance. Those three elements should allow us to work not only for the, let's say, the African community developing the right type of solutions, but also to spread that all around the world. So thank you so much and congrats for our work.
Thank you so much for that. And I have to say, the Resilience Hub has been such a great home for our work. We've been one of the co-leads of the Food and Ag theme, and we've really enjoyed working very closely with the other co-leads and others in the Resilience Hub, and it's been really a good home for our work, really, at COP. So with that, I want us all to watch a very brief video that is going to hopefully give you a flavor of what JRT, as we call the Just Rural Transition, is about before we go into our panel discussion. Can we play the video, please? Wonderful. All right. So we have a wonderful panel of speakers today with us. They all come from different backgrounds, and that's been very intentional. We want to explore how the different levers of change and the angles that they've been working on can actually reinforce each other, so the food system transformation contributes towards building resilience for the local communities, those at the forefront of climate impact. So sadly, actually, one of our panelists, Joan, who is an Indigenous peoples leader, an activist with decades of experience leading on Indigenous peoples' rights, couldn't join us today. We were hoping that we could explore with her some of her work on ensuring land tenure rights and the importance of that issue on improving resilience of local communities, but sadly she's not here. But we're very glad that we're joined today by Anne and Jake, and we of course have one of our virtual panelists also joining remotely. So, Anne, she's our senior advisor, so for me it's kind of like I'm introducing my friend. She's been working on JRT since the beginning, and previously she has more than 35 years of experience working at the international level, within the private sector, at multilateral organizations, civil society, philanthropic sector. So she's been working at the forefront of these issues, really driving solutions and multi-stakeholder collaborations. She has an interesting saying that she's focused on building a strange bedfellow coalitions, increase agricultural resilience, and promote an open trade system. Thank you for joining us today, Anne. Jake, He's the General Manager of Conservation for the Holcomb State and Director of the Holcomb National Nature Reserve. He's also the facilitator for the North Norfolk Landscape Partnership and a 2020 recipient of the Sir Timothy Coleman Prize, awarded by the Royal Norfolk Agricultural Association. Thank you for joining us. I know you've been working also at the forefront of these issues in your region. So we're really, really delighted that you could join us today. And as I said, we'll be representing what has been happening at the global level. Jake brings a very interesting perspective from the region that he's been working on. And then last but not least, we have Ashna Singh. Are we going to be able to see Ashna on the panel now? Oh, wonderful. Hi, Ashna. Can you hear us? Oh, I can't hear her.
Having me.
Do you want to, hello?
Yeah, hi Sarah.
Wonderful, now we can hear you. Can we turn up the volume a little bit? All right, great. It's really, really nice to meet you, albeit virtually.
Yeah, I wish we were meeting under better circumstances than physically, but we'll probably have to make do with the virtual introductions. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for joining us. So Ashna is the Chief Operating Officer and co-founder of MooFarm, a multi-award-winning startup building a connected commerce platform to increase income for 100 million dairy farmers in India. That is a huge, huge scale, and I'm really excited to be talking to you about that. So with no further ado, let's hear from our panelists. I want to start off by hearing your reflections about what's been happening at COP so far. There have been a lot of high-level announcements, commitments, pledges. Tell us what you think. What are you more excited about?
Thanks, Sari. As I said in remarks the other day, I edited a book 32 years ago where we first, I had a chapter on climate change and agriculture. And in 1995, it was the first time the CGIAR actually had a side event, a very, very side event on agriculture and climate change. So to be here now and to see agriculture not being blamed, as it has been for so many years, and farmers not being blamed for every ill in the world, but a recognition from the NGO community, the conservation community, that farmers have to be part of the solution, and that we can't have conversations about nature, we can't have conversations about deforestation, resilience, all of these issues without having farmers at the center of that conversation and without having food and agriculture at the center. A lot of us have been, I think, focused for many years on the adaptation challenges that we knew farmers were going to have with climate change. But what's exciting now is farmers are being seen as part of the solution of being able to mitigate climate change. So I've never seen the level of energy around the food and agriculture sector that I've seen in the last year with the Climate Summit, but also the Food Systems Summit.
Great. So are you optimistic, Anne, that we can crack this?
Yeah, I am. And, I think one thing I was saying to one of my colleagues in the audience just now is, I think, and Diane Holdorf is here from the business sector, I think the business community has also gone from being skeptical about the climate challenges to realizing it's a real existential threat to the business community. And so you've seen a real transition, I think, in how some of the businesses are approaching the climate issues. The business community is sitting down and talking to the farmers, they're sitting down and talking to the environmental community. That was not happening, I would say, even 4 years ago, even 5 years ago. There was so much distrust and animosity. And I think only with that kind of trust and engagement are we going to be able to go forward. So.
Wonderful. Jake, what are your thoughts?
First of all, I think it's amazing what humanity's possibilities are when it puts its mind together. I live in an isolated area in a very populated country, but coming here and seeing people from all over the world having discussions in small groups, understanding the challenges that they all share, because COVID brought us together. Actually, climate change will bring us ever closer because the challenges are so immense and incomprehensible at the moment, and we get a chance to discuss that. So that's something that I really see coming into COP and getting people some of the information that has come out this afternoon, actually, we're going to be, 1.8, 2.4, rather depressing. But I think actually agriculture is a significant solution to this, with 40% of habitable land in agriculture. And if that 40% shrinks due to climate change, then the challenges of those is enormous. And I think so. Some of my colleagues within agriculture are all talking about COP26, but everyone says every year at a COP they talk about the next COP. But I actually think at this time, what I feel has happened in the build-up and during, and all of the dignitaries turning up last week and pledging wonderful pledges that actually, quite frankly, weren't quite sufficient. And then it's the delivery of those pledges which are fundamentally important, and we've seen that fail in the past. But what it has brought agriculture, although not a topic, a headline topic within COP26, but actually a topic that sits in the peripheries of every single discussion. And I think that's really important. So agriculture and how agriculture can provide for us and provide for future generations in better land use and sustainable land use through nature-based solutions, through understanding the importance of the natural world. And we have brought that into our primary vision. Historically, it's been in our peripheral vision, and I think, if I take a positive from COP26, it's at the forefront of everyone's mind currently.
That's a very good point. Can we go to Ashna now? Ashna, have you been tracking developments here? I'm sure you have been. What does this mean for your company and for your sector?
So I really would like to congratulate Sarah that not just bringing agriculture to the forefront, but bringing diverse stakeholders. That's been a brilliant step and initiative because we've just discussed that it's not just farmers, but the other, the public policy that we'll be talking about today, the private players that are actually going to be executing the policies stated. Everybody coming together to formulate a solution for the farmers and taking them as part of the solution. I think that's just simply been brilliant. So specifically no geographic restrictions as well as no particular stakeholder, and bringing everyone together has been a great step at the COP26.
Wonderful, thank you for that. So let's just jump in with our questions, and I'm going to go to you first. Many of you in the audience know governments spend upward of $720 billion annually in public support and policies that is given to food and agriculture sector. Recently, there's been a lot of growing momentum around how can we repurpose this support to deliver better outcomes for nutrition, for people, for planet. And I want to ask you, Anne, what is your take on this? How can we repurpose public support to accelerate a just rural transition and building greater resilience for communities?
So thanks. Not to go back again into my history, but I studied public policy in the mid-'80s and focused on agriculture policy. And I've seen a real evolution in the conversation of people in the 90s saying, we've just got to get rid of all these subsidies to agriculture and the world will be okay. And I think the shift now is the recognition that agriculture provides really important public sector goods, or can provide very important public sector goods. But the issue is that the public support to the sector and to farmers is not aligned around what are the incentives we need to make sure that farmers actually are getting paid, are getting reimbursed, are getting the insurance that they need to transition to a more sustainable, more climate neutral, nature positive, nutritious kind of production systems. And what I think is really interesting here, the other day on Saturday at Nature Day, the UK government launched the Just Rural Transition, small letters, and made a 65 million pound pledge to support the Just Rural Transition. We had 16 governments sign up to that pledge, and we had a number who were going to sign up, but they maybe didn't want to put their names on a piece of paper quite yet. But we've got a lot of interest in this, and I just think it's a real transition from where we were, again, even a few years ago. So just to talk about some of the changes we could see, one would certainly be starting to pay farmers for mitigating climate change, starting to pay farmers for improving soil quality, helping farmers who are in sectors that may not be as environmentally sensitive to invest and transition to the new kinds of production systems. And I don't want to neglect that we are still vastly under-investing in research and innovation. And there's another study that I'm part of, the Commission on Sustainable Ag Intensification, that looked at 1 million pieces of research. And the crop research bubble was about like this, the livestock bubble was about like this, and the climate bubble was about like that in terms of the number of articles published. So, in addition to shifting public policies, we also need to start investing in the kinds of research and innovation so that farmers have the tools and the technologies to really make these shifts that we need them to make. Thanks.
Thanks, Anne. And I think that's a really good segue into my question to Ashna. So if you can go back to Ashna, because Ashna's company has been providing really cutting-edge technological solutions to the livestock sector, to producers and managers. So Ashna, can you give us an example of how really this, is she still on? Oh, okay, all right.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
good. I'm looking at myself here, so I don't know if you're listening to me or not. Okay,
I'm
great.
here.
Wonderful. Okay, so can you give us one concrete example of Move Farm's value proposition? And what I'm really interested in hearing is how can ag innovation contribute towards more resilience for food producers?
Absolutely. So before I dive deep into the example or solution of what we do, I would like to, for everyone present here, give a background of the Indian dairy industry, because that's very important for us to understand the ecosystem first. India is the largest milk producer, but that's because we have the world's highest number of cattle. We have over 300 million of cattle, owned by almost 80 to 100 million small-scale dairy farmers. But when we see productivity-wise, it's almost one of the lowest yield per cattle in the world, 4 liters, which is almost 9 times less compared to the average yield in let's say Europe. So when we are talking about integration of agricultural innovation, private investment, and technology, we must understand that even though there will be investment, because of the nature of the farmers, their diversity, their an average farmer owning 3 to 4 cattle and 100 million of those, it's very important to understand that the difficulty also lies not just in bringing innovation, but also in the adaptation of that technology and innovation on the ground. So that is where I believe that our company Move Farm makes a difference, that while we are bringing in, disrupting the sector with technology, but keeping farmers in the forefront and understanding that only we cannot win with only air war and technology. We need to have ground war. We need to bring farmers in the solution, build that trust and make them part of the solution, during a journey. So what Move Farm does is that we focus on, we have a very simple mission of making farmers prosperous and increasing them farm profitability by making them understand the different aspects of milk production and how they can, using technology and ground extension support, improve that. So that is, giving them good veterinarian advices, bridging the informational gap, making sure they have the right yielding cattle, local breeds, because we understand that livestock, especially the emissions through the cattle, are one of the biggest reasons of the emissions increasing. So that can be tackled through controlled, balanced nutrition, increasing yield, adoption of better practices. So that happens when we integrate our ground support. So we have village level entrepreneurs, agents on ground that interact with the farmer on daily basis. What Anne was talking about, that yes, we need investment in terms of technologies, research, but we also need investment in terms of awareness, because at least farmers in India, they do not know about much about climate change and how they could mitigate that. So yes, awareness and incentivization can play a huge role, especially through partnerships. For example, I'll give you an example. We are working with Unilever in India, who's procuring milk from 500 pourers, and this is the first pilot that we're doing to understand that the milk that they are procuring, if those farmers adopt certain practices, like they have a biogas plant, their increase in yield, their milk production is up to an optimum yield that will result in reduction of emissions. They follow balanced ration practices. So there is also a lot of research that has gone into that nutrition and the balancing of the ration also impacts the emissions. So when they adopt all such practices, not just through technology, but through the people on ground, through veterinary support, through all the advisory that we give, can the procurer, which is, let's say, Unilever in this example, incentivize them for adoption of such practices, whether that is giving them certain rupee extra, certain money extra for the per yield that they procure, or if there could be external funds for giving climate credits. So when they are reducing the footprint, can they be incentivized for their increment in yield and their contribution towards lowering of emissions through such incentivizations? And that's why we believe that even private sector on its own cannot do that. We need partners like for example, the companies who are taking the milk, procuring the milk. We need public sector investment to validate that yes, the per yield rate for people who would be adopting such practices would be more. We need every stakeholder involved to spread that awareness and get the farmers to adopt those practices, as well as incentivize those farmers.
Great, thank you so much, Ashna. I think I took away 3 key points from that, and I think the first one was really interesting, and I heard one of our speakers at a different event mention this, and I think often people forget. Ishmael Sunga was saying at a previous event, he's the CEO of the Southern African Union of Farmers, and he was saying, often people think farmers are this homogenous group, and they come, in reality, there are different farm sizes, there are different farming techniques, and it's important to recognize that, we need to, there is that difference, and the solutions that we provide should actually, address their issues and speak to the different issues that they're faced with. And the other thing I took away was, the fact that technological innovation doesn't really happen independent from people. It doesn't mean you're removing the people. In fact, people are the ones who are going to be implementing those. And I think that's, again, something really, really important to remember. I forgot the last point. I will come back to it if I remember it.
I will tell that, because the things that we focus on is, like I told you, ground war is equally important there with air war. Building trust with farmers and involving them in solution is key. That's second. And third is collaboration for greater good,
yes,
which is also one of our values. Because alone, a private dairy startup cannot do anything. I need to have the right, collaboration, right partners in my mission to, to increase their livelihood.
Exactly. Well, thank you for that reminder. Yes, thanks. So Jake, let's go to you. you've been working with different farming systems and crops that are in and around the states you've managed for the past decades. So tell us really, can you paint a picture of what that looks like and how your work with the farmers around your state have really contributed towards the resilience of those communities?
30 years. I know it doesn't look as old as that, but anyway. So farmers are first and foremost food producers, and they're really proud of being food producers, and whether that's to feed their family, their communities, or beyond. And the challenge is that they're actually also natural capital asset managers, and they're slowly understanding this, and this is their new challenge. But when I go into a farmer's kitchen, if I talk birds, bees, and biodiversity, he doesn't want to know about that. He wants to know about the economics. He wants to know, she wants to know about how to reduce their inputs, how to maximize their outputs, how to look at solutions that we can translate, so we can sit and have these high-powered conversations, but translating that down to the farmer on the ground with his feet in the soil, and actually getting them to understand, what do we mean by nature-based solutions? You know, nature-based solutions has been challenged by Greenpeace this week, but actually because they misunderstand it. But how do I translate that to farmers? Actually, I try to mimic nature in the way that we produce our food. What does nature want to do? The first thing when we expose the soil, first thing it wants to do is cover it, because that protects it. That allows it to be more resilient. And it's just these simple messages to translate. And who do we get to do that? So I've been doing it for a long time, and I have built up a respect for farmers. So when on my way up here, I met a hill farmer who, and we challenged him on how he's going to make his farm business more resilient, because he had 4 children, and how is he going to, his very small farm, how is he going to move that on to the next generation and look at other income streams? And I think, some of the comments earlier, that actually there is a global interest in agriculture now through corporates and investment like never before. We have seen investment move out of petrochemicals, and it's conversations like this that make the petrochemicals. I know some of our colleagues not too far away actually have a slightly different take on that, but actually, we can. There's huge amounts of investment available to us. The Prince of Wales recently said that actually governments have billions. And last week we were pledged billions, but actually corporate and investment have trillions. And they're looking to invest in it. Because what does that do? It's not just CSR, corporate social responsibility. It actually goes beyond that. That's safeguarding their business. That's future-proofing their business. And they're just starting to understand that. Because as a food producer, I don't want to be holding out my begging bowl for handouts. I actually want to be providing a service and feel like I'm doing something of real value for my communities, for my continents, for my country, for globally, for humanity. And actually, I think the next generation, so the average age of an English farmer is 57. I think globally that's probably higher. 470 million farm businesses employing 1 billion people. That's 3% of the global population. That's an enormous amount of people to influence very easily. And if you give them the empowerment that they are doing something really important, and they can learn, peer-to-peer learning, and trusting those that are coming into their farmhouses, onto their farms, and understanding what their requirement is, and being valued for it. That's what farmers have lacked. They have lacked the value. And the environmental organizations actually, for the first time, recognizing the importance of agriculture. The importance of agriculture, when agriculture, it has a checkered past, we understand that, and there are some of the products that agriculture produces are still being challenged. But actually, when agriculture was environmentally sustainable and efficient and producing food, actually 30, 70 years ago, our landscapes were rich in nature. Our water quality was pure and full of life. The trees sang with bird life, and we can bring that back quite easily. I've done it. I spent 30 years doing it, and I can encourage and invest in farmers to do that at scale. And I think that's what we need. That's what we really need to encourage through processes like this.
Great, thank you so much. Yes, indeed, we should applaud that. You talked about investment. I'm going to go rogue, and I can see Diane Holder from the World Business Council on Sustainable Development is here. I don't want to put you on the spot, but I know recently WBCSD has launched the Good Food Finance Network. Do you want to tell us a bit about that or anything else? I saw you nodding as well. Do you want to add to what Jake said? And Jake, do you want to pass on? Oh, okay. Jake, do you want to pass on your microphone to Diane? Thank you, Diane. You're our informal third panelist.
It's great to be here today and to endorse the work of the Just World Transition. That was the button you were talking about.
Yes.
Now I'm with you. That's the second green button. Good. Hi, everybody. It's great to be here and such an opportunity to add to the value of the conversation that we're having here today. Thank you so much for that. WBCSD is a real valued partner to the Just Rural Transition, working together with Meridian and the group. We're helping to coordinate the investor partnership, which is doing, as you were saying, funneling money into the practices on the ground that are going to demonstrate how we actually make these transitions and these shifts. And we're very excited this week to announce several case studies of proof of that concept with investments into moringa farms and several others that are bringing that investment to the ground. Jake, you said it so well. I was one of the ones wanting to cheer with your comments there, because that's how we actually start to get this shift going. We also, and you both mentioned the Good Food Finance Initiative. This is something that has come out of the UN Food Systems Summit, which took place earlier this year, which mobilized a broad group of stakeholders around what it's going to take to transform these systems. And it's a way of really bringing together all types of players across this finance sector to get alignment around KPIs, around what good investments look like, how we scale those investments and drive more funding into it, and how we craft some of the real challenges of making these kinds of investments, like how to be able to bring together large numbers of smallholder farmers who may not have land assets that are risk mitigating assets from an investment banking perspective, try to solve for some of those types of challenges to move this money flow through the system. So it's wonderful to work in partnership together, and it's exciting to see the finance starting to really grapple with both the challenge and the opportunity to transform the system.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Diana. Sorry for putting you on the spot. I knew your intervention would be fantastic. And thank you also for plugging in our case study library. So please do check it out. It includes some really, really exciting case studies. And that's one of the things that JRT is also trying to do, really facilitate that peer-to-peer exchange and show the good examples where this is really making a change on the ground. So with that, I want to actually go to questions and answers from audience. I would also remind people who are watching virtually, please do submit your questions through the platform and we'll be able to receive them and ask them from our excellent panelists. I would also encourage you to kind of interact with each other. If you want to build on each other's answers, please do that. I want this to be really a discussion. So with that, who has a question? Yes, let me, oh, great.
Yeah, it's working. Hi, Andrea Davila from the Climate Champions. My question is, and I think I'm going a bit out of topic, but with a constantly growing population and meat consumption like rising with the population, where do you see the role of meat consumption in our Race to Zero world in the future?
Are you asking this specifically to one of the panelists, or they can? Wonderful. Who wants to go first? Who wants to volunteer to respond to this question?
Yeah, okay, so
There you go.
Depends what type of meat. So we're talking white meat, are we talking red meat? Okay, in general. So nature-based solutions. The wildebeest in the African savanna are managed by predators and rainfall. And they move around and they graze and they create functioning ecosystems, and it's millennia old. What food production systems need to do is to mimic that. So there is a role within agriculture for meat production because of its associated benefits, one being feeding us and providing us with protein, and the other being producing functioning natural habitats. So I have the nature reserve that was referred to earlier is 10,000 acres, and it is grazed by cattle. It is also grazed by geese. It is grazed by deer, and it is managed by waders and amphibians, and it is a functioning ecosystem. If I remove the cattle from that ecosystem, it drops in value. Its biodiversity value drops because I'm trying to mimic in my own little world. I'm trying to mimic the African savanna in a English context. And that's the other thing that is really key within agriculture. It is context, because what I apply in my little area, my tiny little sand drop of area that I look after, actually is very different than the farmer I met 60 miles south of Glasgow. So it's applying those approaches, and he has to graze grass. And what we do very well in the temperate zone is actually we grow grass very well. And grass managed correctly, mimicking nature, whilst trying for us to produce food, actually then produce all those associated benefits that we've talked about earlier. So I think there will always be a place for meat production within our agricultural systems because of their associated benefits.
Anne?
Yeah, if I could just add a little bit to that very good point. I think when we talk about meat systems, we always imagine what we have now with moving to a very different pattern of vegan, vegetarian. There is so much that can be done within the livestock sector to change and reduce its climate footprint and its environmental footprint, that we have technologies, we have knowledge, and we heard from Moo Farm some of the things that are, and I'm sure that she can elaborate, that are being done in that area. But the one thing I want to point out too is that livestock, and you heard it from India, employs a lot of people around the world, millions of people around the world, and that for many women, livestock is their main asset, their main source of wealth. So when we talk at the abstract level in these conversations, we really have to go back down to how many people's lives are dependent on this particular sector, and how can we make it better than it is. Thanks.
Thank you, Anne. And I'm sure Ashna will also have her views on this. Ashna, do you want to tell us what you think?
Thank you so much, Anne. I think you chose my words. Absolutely bang on correct. We cannot think of this in isolation. For example, India, we have 100 million farmers whose livelihood depends on dairy, on livestock. Agriculture for them is when they get income twice a year. From dairy, that from cow, buffaloes, they get income twice a day. That's their cash flow. That's how they are able to, maintain their livelihood and families. And we cannot, I do not foresee a world, especially and specifically India, where we start saying that, okay, we're not going to do this. Yes, we can take certain measures, but we completely eradicate dairy and go, let's say, plant-based milk. I don't see that happening anytime soon in India, because we have 40%, 50% of the country's population depending on that as their primary source of income. And specifically women, out of these millions of dairy farmers, 80 to 90% are rural women who are actually the backbone of the animal husbandry sector. They are the ones who take care of the cattle. They are the ones who feed the cattle. They are the ones who make the right decisions. Men are only who take the milk from the house and go to a nearest milk center and give the milk and take the money. So we can't take away from those rural population with just thinking of one aspect in isolation.
thanks, Ashna, for that very relevant intervention, given that today, one of the themes for today is gender. So it's important to remember that these issues do have a gender aspect to them as well. So next question. Yes, please, lady in the back.
Hello, thank you for that interesting discussion. The latest research from Cambridge on the sort of land sharing and land sparing seems to be saying that we should be allocating some areas for nature and some areas for intensive agricultural transition and production. And I'm just wondering how that fits with sort of the livelihoods and the just rural transition. Yeah, I had finished my question.
So I think this is a global debate. You know, I know it's within the UK. It's quite a big topic currently. Personally, my personal view is actually it's all about sharing. You know, we can make space for nature within our farmland. We can have extensive agriculture that we manage most of the world already. Actually, we can't go back. You know, things have changed. You know, the topic about technology. You know, COP20. Can you imagine this in COP20? You know, we have devices that can change the world in our pockets. So actually, we can. I believe humanity has the ability and has the will currently, through moments like this, to actually have functioning ecosystems that provide us with benefit, but also make sure that nature has benefits too. So I think I undoubtedly sit within the sharing camp.
Yeah, thank you. This has been an issue of mine for a long time, and I hate to disagree with such a prestigious university, but you know, that argument leads you into, you know, we can produce in a highly intensive, highly polluting way that is going to end up degrading our water, degrading our soil, degrading our land in order to save this part over here. But you can't separate the earth. You know, you can't make a distinction between what are these forests and what is the water and the land quality, et cetera. So, and I wanted to say earlier, you know, there's this mythology, and I'd love to hear your views on this. This is mythology. If you adopt these more nature-positive methods and to think more carefully about how you're using inputs, where you're using them, when you use them, that somehow that's going to lower your yield. And I think we have so much more knowledge and science and technology to help us understand. I mean, I was talking to a colleague of mine, you know, if a farmer just changes his planting date by a few weeks to be better timed with the climate and the weather, the difference in yield can be tremendous, right? And we have the technology now to help farmers do that. So this is, to me, a really false dichotomy. And you know, I used to run the Biodiversity International, one of the CG centers that was focusing on how can we bring agricultural biodiversity back into our production systems. And there are varieties of wheat and maize and rice and all these other crops that have really strong potential to provide higher yields, add diversity, and be more resilient. So I just reject that, frankly, as a very false dichotomy. Thanks. Not to be opinionated.
Thanks, Anne. This is so great to have you both on this panel. These are the exact kind of, you know, you guys are both experts, and thank you for that question. It's a very important question. I was just reading about it before I started this event, so very, very timely. Oh, do you want to? Yeah, please.
So I've lost the momentum suddenly. All the technology, so yields have plateaued. Actually, but we can increase yields, but we increase inputs, and we then incur degradation. And actually, so farming, and you know, restorative agroecology, restoration agriculture, regenerative agriculture. This is happening globally. There is a movement within agriculture that understands that actually we can utilize nature to our benefit to the point where we increase biodiversity while still producing food. And I think that is something we can go back to, what we can take the nuances of the 21st century, but utilizing some of the practices in the past and understanding that and implementing that and making our farm businesses very quickly, within months or within years, you can make your farm businesses more resilient. Because as we see climate change and as we see these weather events that have serious impacts on our capability of producing food, if we use the systems that we have been using, that we have now recognized to have huge impacts on our climate and our biodiversity, actually we can start to rebuild those. We can build soil organic matter. We can sequester carbon. What we're not very good at is measuring it. And if you don't measure it, you can't manage it. But actually, peer-to-peer learning is understanding that. And all of that, bringing that all together, actually allows us to have nature all around within our farms and feeding an ever-growing population.
Wonderful, thank you. I know this is the section for Q&A with audience, but I do have a follow-up, so I hope it's okay. We've been talking a lot about solutions and, that they exist, that there is so much momentum, there is so much, technological advances. We are collaborating probably more than ever. What is stopping us? What are the barriers to actually making progress so urgently?
So I don't want to hog the mic. I'm really interested to hear from our virtual colleague, because it's actually the hurdles are actually farmers. What is a good farmer? What is a bad farmer? Actually, I think that coin has just flipped, because a good farmer is one that actually provides ecosystem services. A good farmer is one that actually produces, can feed his family, their family. And a bad farmer is now being recognized as one actually that is causing damage. So we've seen this shift, but farming communities are, they can be stubborn at times. They can be set in their ways. Getting right down at grassroots. If they've had a system that has worked for them under the current climate, as in the global climate, that's fine. As soon as that changes, it becomes fragile. So those are the hurdles I think that we will come against.
And I want to come back to you after Ashna, because I saw you shaking your head at the notion of bad farmers. So I want to come back to that. But Ashna, let's hear from you.
Yes.
What do you think about this?
I think the biggest hurdle is the execution of the innovation, the technology, the concepts that we have, because I think Jake had touched upon this topic, and I would like to further that with certain examples that the farmers are not aware. They are like, if I take example of dairy farmers, dairy is a profession in India that has been passed on from generation to generation. So without even thinking or choosing to have cattle and buffalo in my farm, they've been having that for years, decades together, right? And they have never stopped and thought that, am I adopting the best practices, or what even are the best practices to and whether they are climate friendly. They don't understand the concept of climate friendly. So yes, that is the execution. Their awareness is something that is the biggest hurdle. But to solve that, it's very important to speak their language. And their language is not climate change or climate reduction. Their language is, I need more milk at a better rate, better quality milk, because that's going to give me more money per liter of milk. Because, like, for example, in India, the better quality of milk, the better fat, SNF percentage, the better rate per liter that you get. I need increased yield, and I need to reduce my expenses. What I just care about what is it that I am getting. But if you ensure that the practices that are supposed to be incorporated for the sustainable practices are actually a win-win for the farmers and for the environment. Who says you will have to choose one? For example, balanced nutrition. So that leads to balanced nutrition will reduce their expenses. Doesn't mean the more input that I'm giving to my cattle, the more yield it will come. There is no direct correlation of more nutrition inputs equals to more yield. But balanced nutrition means reduction of expenses of farmers. They will probably spend less per month, so their profitability increases. While at the same time, that small adaptation of giving the right mix of dry matter, green fodder, and minerals will help the environment as well. So it is how you speak their language and you translate those practices into something that they will understand and adopt.
Thank you.
You know, farming has to be one of the most risky businesses in the world, right? In the world. Anybody who's tried to grow a tomato in their backyard, if the sun doesn't shine or if it rains at the wrong time, you're done. And this is just because we can have a salad, right? I mean, but people who depend on this for a living tend to be quite risk averse. And there's been a lot of research that have showed even if you think you could get a higher yield by adopting something new, if you know what you're doing and what it's been giving you, you're likely to keep doing it, even if there's a higher income out there for you. So I think this risk aversion and riskiness of the sector is one of the biggest hurdles to change. And that's why I think the policy incentives, shifting those policy incentives to help farmers manage that transition to new production systems, and corporate business incentives to, again, provide that kind of insurance that there's going to be a market for this new product, are really, really critical to making the transition, in addition to the things the other speakers have said.
Great, thank you, Anne. We have time for more questions. I can see, yes, gentleman over there.
Sorry, can I just say I love the way there's complete alignment with the English farmers and the Indian farmers. So globally we are united.
Yes, you share the same concerns.
I'm sorry I haven't been here for the entire program, but from what I've heard, I've largely agreed with everything you folks have said. I would want to challenge one thing you've said, and that is that if you increase inputs, you degrade your environment. I represent the International Biochar Initiative, which has taken a technology that was first utilized in the Amazon region centuries or millennia ago and was discovered by the conquistadors in 1561 to create pockets of production that yielded 4 times the yield of the other surrounding areas with the same soils. And this is biochar. At that time, they burned in small pots biomass and used it in their soils. We didn't really understand this until soil scientists began to learn about it in the 1960s, and we're still learning a lot more about it. And there are now modern technological ways to change the production systems and to change the material properties of biochar so that it accomplishes different objectives depending on the time and temperature you use in a pyrolysis machine. But I think the point being is there are systems where it will increase your yields. It will utilize filtration, make filtration and nutrient and water retention better in the soils. It will loosen soils and allow the plant's roots to spread more deeply and fully, and therefore increase the robustness of the plant. So there's still lots of other questions about how we do it in an economically feasible way because of primarily the transportation of the biomass to the place where you're going to convert it. But we can talk about those things later. The point being, there are systems of improving productivity that can also increase your yields and sequester carbon to a very large degree that maybe the potential, lots of studies have shown that it could be maybe 5 gigatons or of CO2 reduction. So we're still learning about it, but I think there's great possibilities on the economic side because of carbon markets, carbon credit markets, to change the economics and to make this a much more viable approach. So let's not assume that all inputs are bad inputs. Let's look at some that provide nature-based solutions that are effective and are ancient, but also modern in their application.
So I'm going to correct myself and say synthetic fertilizers. So I totally understand that, totally get that point, and that is nature-based solutions, learning from the past, utilizing, investing in R&D, and actually understanding how we can implement it at scale. And actually, one thing humanity is very good is actually implementation at scale, should it wish to cooperate and work with one another. And biochar, and more recently, so the growing of potatoes and subject to blight. More recently, they have found a South American potato that is resistant to blight. So if we can then use that and use that at scale, actually suddenly that's a huge reduction on an input that probably isn't required, and we can require nature-based solutions. So yeah, so there's lots of work to be done.
So we agree on one thing. Great, that was the quickest way of reaching consensus. Thank you for that. And do you want to add anything on the biochar?
What he said, yeah.
There you go.
Maybe I want to add one thing. I mean, Rob, I appreciate the points there, but I just want to add one thing about learning from the past. I remember one of my classes at graduate school was in rural development, and the professor there said, you know, we went down with a bunch of economists to Peru, and we looked at potato farming in Peru, and we thought these people were crazy and not rational because they were planting small plots of potatoes at all sorts of different elevations and many, many different varieties of potatoes. And the economists said, these people are nuts, they're crazy, they are not getting the highest yield. But when we realized what they were doing, just like any of us who are investing in the stock market, they were diversifying their portfolio. And that was a very, very old technique that now everybody's understanding has a lot of relevance. So I think, to me, your point is more, you know, we do have a lot of indigenous knowledge. We do have a lot of ancient knowledge that has scientific backing, but we need to really pull that out in ways that others who might be skeptical of that can understand and appreciate. So.
Thank you. Ashna, we haven't forgot about you. Do you have a specific perspective on biochar?
No, I think that I will reserve my comments and let the experts do the talking. So I would not like to add where I don't know much.
All right, great. Are there any other, do we have any other questions from the audience? All right. Oh, there you go. Hold on. Sorry.
Thank you. How can we scale up the technology that Ashan is offering through her company? How can we grow this company to, you know, engage and offer the solution to other farmers in India and beyond?
Asha, there seems to be some interest in your company. How can we grow it?
Very, very interesting to see that people here feel that it can be adopted not just in India but outside of India as well, because I believe the problems farmers face are the same. So definitely, I think we just talking about our current resources, we already have huge opportunity and a lot of millions and millions of farmers to cover right now. But yes, it is in our mind that probably in another 2 years we would be open to entering into other developing countries. because we don't want to enter without the right partnerships, because we would like to have, like I said, only technology will not make a difference. We would like to penetrate completely with people on ground, with partnerships of, the right, for example, our cattle trading platform, or to have the local veterinarians who offer the local knowledge and advisory. So I believe we would need certain amount of time to actually completely adopt both technology as well as our ground extension to countries beyond India for now.
Great, thank you. Did you get your answer? Wonderful. All right. So I think I don't see any more raised hands, and I think I'm going to come back to you, our panelists. We talked about, our reflections, what's happened, at COP so far. I want to close off by hearing from you, a year from now, next COP, what do you hope have changed by then? Yeah? Whoever wants to go first.
Is it on a global level or on a local level?
At whatever level you want to talk about.
So on a local level, we're going to get bigger, and we're not going to wait a year. We're going to start. So there are two key points in agriculture. It's called the spring and the autumn, where we can make a difference. And actually, so come the spring, we will start to make a difference, and we will repeat that process again in the autumn. So 1% improvement on 100 farms that sit within our areas is 100% of improvement. So a year from now, that's what I'll be doing locally. Globally, we want to be telling this story. We want to be exchanging with people on different continents, using different systems that we can work, that understanding each other's businesses, looking at new income streams. There's a nervousness on carbon sequestration and carbon offsetting and credits. What we can do, let's do biodiversity gain. Let's sell that to the corporates, because we can do that very easily. So in a year from now, we will have corporate investment into increased biodiversity.
I have an agriculture biodiversity index for you. We can talk about that. Taking it to the global level, I think people have said we need an agriculture day next year. I think we need a whole agriculture COP. Yeah? I mean, I don't think a day is enough to have this conversation. But one thing I would like to see is really concrete commitments from governments and companies and farm organizations, not just about how we're going to keep agriculture within that 1.5, but how we're going to make up for the shortfall that we're seeing from other sectors of the economy that are not able to make these kind of strong commitments.
Oh, I love that, Anne. Ashna, what do you think?
I think that by next year, I really hope to have certain case studies and actual examples of the commitments being made, even from us, right? From everybody who've made certain commitments and who've taken it upon themselves to execute those commitments. I believe it will be very interesting to actually come back and see whether the incentivization worked, whether the commitments to, bring farmers in worked as well. So live examples would be great.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Ashna. And thank you so much to our audience, those who stayed until the end. I know you must have been going to a lot of events, and it can become a lot. So I'm grateful that you stayed with us. So just to conclude, it seems to me that we are really excited about everything that is happening. There has been, so much technological progress, so much momentum. We are finally recognizing that, farmers have to be at the heart of these solutions, that this change needs to happen with them and for them. So, but also we're recognizing that we need to act urgently. We need to act from tomorrow. So I think that's a good takeaway for me. And that we also need to engage all the different levers of change, working together, reinforcing each other's work to make sure the change that we want to see, that the huge, huge change that we want to see in the world actually happens. So with that, I want to thank all of our panelists, all of our audience, both virtually and in the room. Please stay in touch, check out our website, follow us on social media, look at our case study library, and come talk to us after if you're interested to learn more about JRT. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much.